All right, finally, after 3 recordings, 6 hours, advice from you. Thank you very much, pointing me in the right direction. I think I finally have the asynchronous, and that's a lie because it's now synchronous. My web page is synchronized with the server so that the web page waits for the server to come back and say, I found some or I didn't find some. Asynchronous means the two are running in two different threads, and one's doing something, the other one, and when this one gets done, it reports back and does some weird stuff. The solution was to make it synchronous, but I still don't like that term because this page is not going back to the server. I'm not leaving this page, going back to the server, refreshing the page and sending it back. This page never leaves. It gets a signal from the server without having to go back to the index page and reload stuff. This is a duplicate ID. It recognizes it and says it's already in a database. This is a duplicate first name, last name combination. Think logical key. Those two are already in the database. If I change the last name and leave, then it's happy. If I change it back, it's happy. Not happy. Change the first name, it's happy again. So what I'm doing with the keys is just putting an error marker on both of these, and that's where my mistake was. I forgot to clear this one. It kept staying there because the first name actually clears this error marker, which probably has its own risks, but shouldn't cause any trouble. Same thing here, change the number and the marker goes away and it should go merrily on its way. So that seems to be working. So let's take a look at the code behind the scenes. Not a lot has changed. Here's the function, the two functions that check for duplicates. Okay. The actual asynchronous functions you guys suggested, I thought it was a good idea to create a folder of duplicate checks so that we don't have these, how many of them could there be in Lions? 30, 40 of them, who knows? Put them all into one folder so they're in a folder, which just makes this a little more complicated. The duplicate checks themselves, nothing changed here except the dots, because now the connection folder or the connection file is out one level. Other than that, this was okay the way it was. So the way this asynchronous or don't refresh my page but get me database access, I don't know what the right term for it is. I'm going to stick with asynchronous. The way it works is you run your query and you echo whatever it is you want to return. If you're returning a ton of stuff, which is probably not, this is probably not the right way to do it, but you make a big, huge string is what I did last year, and then you process the string on the other side. But you echo the results, so your results are basically a string. The server then, I mean not the server, the jQuery then on the other side accepts that or catches it. So here's the duplicate name. Somewhere there's a duplicate ID check that looks just like it. There it is. And here's the kicker. That's all it took. Okay, it didn't take a when, though that might have worked, but I saw this and went, oh my God, it was one of those flashbacks from last year when I was fighting with this. Oh my God, that's right. This is, and that's all it took. And what I did in my, let's go back down to the name one. I'm just flying back and forth here. When I go down to the name one, what I did in here is I put in a console command that says, I'm done with my web data access, and I put another console command in here that said, I'm done with the function. And in every test, this comes up first, then comes that. So it's waiting. And that's what I needed. Get or post, I've swapped those out. Remember, there are now these different components. Do you want to get or post? I don't think it's going to make much difference. Where is the PHP file, not function, that you want to execute? Point it in the right direction. And what data do you want to send it? These are get variables, basically. They're going to show up in the request array at named first name and last name with these values that I pulled off the form. This whole deal here then waits, this Ajax function waits, excuse me, until this processing is complete, okay, and this is the processing, waits till it's complete. The result set comes back called data into this success function. Actually, success is a parameter. The function is what deals with the results, very similar to what we've been, some of the weird stuff we did in Swift. And then I simply check to see if the data is greater than 0. If it's 0, there's nothing out there. If it's 1, shouldn't be any more than 1, right? Because I'm looking for duplicates here. Unless we're allowing duplicates, and I haven't written that code. If you want to allow duplicates with user authorization, have fun. It should be it's probably a JavaScript with an alert saying, hey, there's a duplicate. You want to allow it? If they say yes, then we go on. Otherwise, we say, fix it, error message. So this checks to see if what I got was a 1. If it's greater than 0, is dupe is false or is true. Is dupe is true. And then I return is dupe. The ID one looks just like it, except I only send it one parameter. Is the data greater than 0? Is dupe. This might be worth making a function because that's the same, that's the same. This is different, but I could send in just that piece. The downside is the number of parameters differs, and you'd have to write not a terrible function, right, to create these data things. And I don't know if we can do that on the fly. So, yep.
In your success,
yep.
why don't you put your JavaScript in there for the...
Why don't I put the JavaScript in there, John? His question is, why don't I just put the error marker code here? I asked John because he pointed me to this website. This function's job is to determine whether there's a duplicate. That's its job.
Okay.
If I display the error marker here and change its title, that's a side effect. And John's website kind of turned me on to that. The name of the function is duplicate ID display. If it's a duplicate ID, display an error marker.
Basically, it goes back to
It goes back to the same place all the other error markers are displaying, which is also convenient because now here's an error visibility, here's an error visibility, it's all in the same place. And all that function does is figure out, is it an error?
I was going to say it goes back to just if you have an and in your explanation or function.
Exactly.
Then it should be.
That's a two-part method, or that's not its job. So I split that out. That was a conscious decision, and I'll thank John for pointing me to that website. I haven't even got all the way through it yet, but remembering stuff. Because that was, honestly, first time I wrote it, that's where it was. So right here, oh good, then display the error marker in the last name thing. The convenient part of that, if I'd left it, is my last name, first name. They both go here to check for a duplicate name. But what was really a little messy is when I was validating my first name, notice that the first name removes the error marker from the last name in case there's a duplicate check. But if the last name is missing, I just removed its error marker. But but the next place I go is there, so it'll come back. I don't think that's a big problem. But because I'm putting the error marker in one place for a duplicate record on the last name, I have to remove this or it never goes away. And that could be an issue. Maybe, now that I think about it, maybe the better place for this is inside this if, is inside else if. No, I need to remove this before I ask that question. There's no good place to put that.
Why don't you, are your names stored as one?
Name what? First and last?
Yes.
No.
So you have first name and then last name?
Right. I just put the error marker for duplicate on the last name because I need some place to put it. The other alternative is to put it somewhere else. Put a little error marker in between that's its own error marker, except it's not really a field, but that's okay. I can make it an error marker and give it a name. That's not that tough. And just hang it in the middle there someplace, though aligning it might be fun.
So you're...
You look just like
no,
me.
I'm just thinking, in your PHP query, could you say, select first name, last name, where first name is like blank, last name is like blank, and
Like
the
blank?
IDs
What do you mean like blank?
where the, because you have to send in a value or
To who?
to your duplicate async dup check for name.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Over here?
Yeah.
2 parameters are coming in, yes. They do come in. Because remember, in the function,
Right.
I have to send those 2 things in. That happens down here. I send in 2 pieces of information.
Right. Then if you
Okay, ponder that. For right now, this works. Okay, seems to work. There's really three components. First part is when you're validating, make sure it's not blank, make sure it's not too long. If everything else seems to be cool, then here's my if statement that says if the original has changed. If the original hasn't changed, you don't want to do a duplicate check. So that's first, because I'm using short circuiting here, because if this is false, then it never checks for a duplicate ID. So if the original employee ID, and remember in this table, the ID is not auto number. It's a social security number type of ID. It's old school. Okay, so this, I don't know how valuable that is to you. Okay, but you can do it with primary keys. If this logical key, because it's not auto number, it's a logical key. If this logical key has changed and it's a duplicate, then yell at them. And then there's this, and then that's the first part. The second part is this function. Is it a duplicate ID that looks like this? And these functions all look pretty much the same. I said we might be able to rewrite these, except that the data, the number of parameters changes. And I don't know if there's a way I can dynamically create my data values here on the fly. I'm not sure. So right now I have separate functions. This changes, everything else is the same. The third component, so the first component is adding it to your validation. Second component is write this pretty simple function. Third component is do the actual PHP component. This is all in, I'm going to say jQuery. And if you look at my code that I'm going to share with you, there's this convoluted mix of jQuery and JavaScript, and I use EL sometimes, and I use dollars other times, and it's because I'm not quite comfortable with the jQuery yet. Plus, a lot of the stuff was there. So I'm just leaving it and trying to get this thing to work. The other thing I found is changing the title using jQuery is painful. You got to get at the property of an element and then set its property to a new value versus this .style, that property, that title done. It's a lot easier in JavaScript than it is in jQuery for a change. So I left some of those. So here's a ERR title. That's an EL thing. So it's kind of a convoluted mess, but the logic is what's important here. So part one, put it in your validation. Part two, write the duplicate function in JavaScript /J, well, this is jQuery. And then write the PHP to execute the query using the parameters and return results of 0. That's just one value. Notice this is a fetch, not a fetch all. I know there's only one value because I asked for a count. I is the programmer, so I is in control. I'm expecting one number. Give me the first number, the first array element. Still sends it back as a one element array. This scripts it out and makes it available back to the jQuery. The jQuery then looks at it and processes from there. Easy, not necessarily on the programmer side, but those of you who've had your internships now know that's not an issue. It doesn't matter if it's easy for the programmer, but I think it's much better to have this doing its duplicate check. First of all, it's doing it on blur, so I get the answer much quicker than I used to. So I used to get the answer on save. So now I get a blur on this that says that's a duplicate right away. I think it's a little better. And I'm not sending, from a programmer's perspective, this could be a lot worse. Could be sending this page back to the server saying, hey, we got a new ID, check that. The whole page, no thank you.
is this This isn't, is this a new? Does it only do that on new, not on edit?
No, it does it all the time. This was an edit. This was not a new. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a new, but it'll do it on edit.
Which might get annoying. For
Why?
the ID, because if you don't,
It's if the logical keys don't change, it doesn't check.
oh yeah,
Okay. So if I come into Tammy here and I just tab away from that, oh, what's your problem? Oh no.
yeah.
Why?
What about the first name? Does
Damn
that
it,
do
Justin, you're always causing me trouble. Okay, so now let's leave the first name. That's okay. That's okay.
Why don't you just not let them edit the employee ID?
I could.
That's the way the program is set though.
That's not how this one's written, though. You don't always get to make those rules, right? You work at Skyward. All the databases have auto number with primary keys.
Yes,
Lucky you. Don't go anywhere else.
we do too.
You can go there then. All right. So mine are the only stupid ones. That's because these are left over from 10 years ago. All right. But no, that's not an answer. Why is it, it worked okay with the names.
Are you sure you're checking to make sure it hasn't changed?
Yeah. No, obviously something's wrong. So you're right. Let's look. I don't know if I want this in the recording, but I guess I'm not done after all.
Interesting.
So here I said, if the employee ID value that I have now is not equal to the original employee ID value, if it's not equal to, that should be false. Maybe it's not short-circuiting.
Does it do the and or the not equal first?
But they're not equal.
No,
Because not equal is a relational operator versus a compound operator that always gets done second.
what's,
Otherwise, what's the and tied to? Just this? No, doesn't work that way. Shouldn't work that way. Didn't work that way down here. That's what's confusing to me is why does this function for that one, but not the other?
where's your other one?
This is the good one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There it is.
validate name.
Okay. It says if this plus this, I concatenated them, is not equal to the originals concatenated, then check to see if it's a duplicate name.
You do left in bold first and last name?
Pardon me?
You do left in bold first?
Yeah,
and
the
last
code's
name?
identical.
Okay.
So there's the same thing.
Are you perhaps not setting the original? ID?
That's my next thought. So where do I go for that? Just make sure we're all on the same page.
It's in the form, yeah.
In the form. The form is what sets that's where the original ID comes from. All right, so right here I'm saying is the org emp ID, and I wonder if I spelled it right. Maybe it's, but why would it work on a blank form then? That's bizarre.
Because it might be blank to begin with. Or the edit has.
Or it's got the wrong name, and so that it tries to find this, and I don't know what jQuery does if there is no org emp ID. So you're right, let's go there. Views,
Well, if there was
and
no-
here's my employee details, and here's the org ID.
Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There's no org. Oh.
So that was org ID. Where else did I use it? Maybe that's the only place I used it. Okay, so now it should. Let's see what happens. Don't think I need to refresh this page.
You might need,
There you go.
Wow.
Now, I happen to know, and this is part of Justin's question, that there is a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now that they don't match, now it says there's already a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Okay, so that's good. And Tammy's other name was Bar. Now it says there's already a Tammy Bar in the database, and that's exactly what I wanted to do, to tell me you're changing Tammy Agent. She's changed her name to Bar. No, she's already in there. Now, maybe there's 2 Tammy Bars. And that's a whole nother piece of logic that I'll let you solve as a homework assignment due on Monday.
You're joking, right?
Yes. So, thank you for pointing that out and making me test it. But this was the conversation that Brittany and Harold were having with us the other day. Right? They're back there going, okay, how do all these things track from the GUI to the JavaScript to the jQuery to the PHP save to the PHP new to the, oh my God. Yes. There's got to be an easier way. I don't think so. We could use ASP instead of PHP, but I don't think it's any easier. We still got the same problems. We got to communicate from the server to the form to the jQuery that's playing in the form. That's why you test hopefully one piece at a time and go. All right, but yeah,
All we need is just 4 monitors a piece, so we
Yeah.
can have each individual.
I'll work on that.
Can you put that in the budget?
I'll try on it. Yeah, but how many people am I going to get?
Yeah, we just need a bunch of cables.
Yep.
There's no
That's
You
true.
You can, the max log steals another.
And then the max class size in this room would be 7. 3 of you have to drop. We don't have room for you. Actually, we have teams, so we're good.
Do 3.
All right, I will share this, and again, I will maybe put some document. Well, Sheila asked me to update my notes. I will update my notes and say, here's the 3 parts that you need to worry about. All right, and how to deal with them. And I'll probably just steal this code and put them in my notes so that you don't have to go digging through some other program to find it. But I will post this. It's called Async Final. I'll post it on OneDrive, and that'll be the end of it. Question?
Is there a way of documenting this?
Document, that's called my notes, yes, and that's why I joke and say, no, I'm not updating my notes anymore, but to update this, it goes into my notes, and it's tough to find stuff to document, that's source overflow, or not source, Stack Overflow. That's where some of that stuff comes from. Documenting is tough. I had a student come into my office today with their program in programming logic. We're doing database access, first time, right? Database access. Won't run on my laptop. Works great, virtual machine. Won't run on my laptop. Won't run on his laptop. Works on the virtual machine over there. Works great in the lab over there. Well, what? Insane. This 64-bit laptop. They get an error message. We look at it carefully. It says that the access version 12 is not registered here. We looked up and then halfway through Googling that error message, I went, oh my God, now I remember. Let's go to the properties and compile this for an x86 system and see what happens instead of any, and that solved the problem.
I had that problem.
You did. But, it comes back to haunt me once a year. When does this stuff come back to haunt you? When it breaks?
I have a philosophy about notes.
You have a philosophy?
Stuff like this,
Yeah?
don't take them.
Don't take notes?
No, by the time you come back to this,
It won't make any sense
it's-
anyways.
Well,
It'll be different.
it's going to be different. Tech is always changing. Otherwise, you end up going back to your notes and you're doing something that's deprecated by 5 years.
Well, yeah, and that was, right? Because the original version of this, or the original version of my asynchronous access to the database is using the HTTP stuff that you found out.
So let's
But before you go on, that is one of the beauties of jQuery, if you will. There's some people who hate it, but that's one of the beauties of jQuery is they don't change stuff a lot, right? If the way you're supposed to communicate with the server directly changes, they change that AJAX function, whatever it was called, and we don't even know the difference. I don't know how that connects. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes because AJAX is obviously hiding all that from me, which is the beauty of it, I think. AJAX is supposed to be cross-browser compliant. How do they do that? I don't care. Finally, it's cross-browser compliant. By the way, I heard from my networking students today that IE is in its last legs. There's a new version coming down. You all heard that already? Okay, I'm in the wrong news feeds.
It's probably just going to be a wrapper around that.
It is. New
Knowing
box,
Microsoft.
new box, same browser.
It's just a rebranding.
Well, they need to though, right? Because IE's got a bad rep.
That's true.
Okay, and the new version, if you've tried 11, it's not that bad. Right? And it does a lot of the same stuff that all the other ones do, but nobody's going to it because they've already switched to Chrome, already switched to Firefox, and they don't want us. I'm not going back to IE. That was horrendous. Well, then I would give it a new name, and it's not IE. It's the
Spartan.
Spartan. I love the name. picture a bunch of chest muscles and pecs in my browser now.
They're keeping IE around for enterprise.
Oh, yeah, but
But it's just gonna be a name eventually. It's
Yeah.
gonna be the same version.
I guess. Yes, sir.
I will say that on this particular.
I'm still recording all this. Do we need this recorded?
No.